My last bartending job came with a strange set of rules that carried serious consequences. I dropped out of my freshman year of college when I discovered I was pregnant with my daughter. I had just turned 19, and despite being legally an adult, I had no idea what I was doing. Leaving school made me feel like a failure, but I threw myself into parenting and picked up night shifts as a server and eventually as a bartender. Life was going as well as it reasonably could, until shifts at the restaurant started getting fewer and fewer. I desperately needed more money to support myself and my daughter, and I needed it faster than finishing my degree would ever allow. I knew bartenders in the city made far better money, so I began searching online for openings. Nothing came up. Surprisingly, I ended up being contacted by a friend, Morris, who had briefly worked at the same restaurant before getting recruited by another buddy to bartend at a bar in the city. I trusted his judgment, so I agreed to come in for an interview. "These people are rich, Kel, filthy rich, but they're fuckers. You'll need thick skin," he warned. I didn't mind, I was thrilled. I showed up for my interview on a Thursday night in September. I still remember the stark contrast between the chaotic city outside and the bleak, windowless building in front of me. No name, no sign. Just 6 steps leading down to a solid black door that I only half believed was the actual entrance. Inside, the place was stunning. Warm, dim lighting glowed over sleek black marble high-top tables. Most were empty. It was a Thursday after all, but a few were occupied by well-dressed women in their 40s. One of them looked me up and down with a condescending smile. I instinctively tugged at the hem of my blouse. A man hurried toward me from what looked like the kitchen. He was short, with intentionally slick jet black hair. "Kelly?" he asked, extending a hand. He introduced himself as Craig and guided me to a table near the back. It quickly became clear the job was already mine, and I felt a wave of gratitude toward Morris for speaking so highly of me. Craig made copies of my ID and handed me some standard paperwork. "Now, Kelly, honey, I'm not sure how much Morris has told you about our little establishment, but the nature of the work here is unique." I nodded, noticing Morris behind the bar. He looked tense. "Yes, sir. He told me a bit," I said, trying to look attentive. "Our clientele is very affluent. They expect exceptional service. They come here not only for food and drinks, but for entertainment. Many of them are also extremely private." He shuffled through the papers. "If you choose to accept the job, you'll be required to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Nothing dramatic. Some of our guests hold high-ranking positions in the community and prefer their leisure activities stay confidential." This part caught me off guard, but since I had zero experience in places like this, I just nodded. "Morris will train you behind the bar and walk you through the rules. One last thing, assuming you accept the offer, your employment depends on a reasonable score on our aptitude test. It should only take about 15 minutes. You'll receive a link by email." I agreed, shook his hand, and he sent me to the bar with Morris. I was genuinely happy to see him. I'd always thought of him as a good friend, but he seemed unfocused, almost anxious. I chalked it up to the job's pressure. He started showing me around the bar and explaining the drink menu. I listened closely while waiting for the test to arrive. Eventually, my phone dinged. "That the test?" he asked. "Yeah, we can finish later, just take it now," he said quickly, aggressively polishing champagne glasses. I sat on a stool and opened the link. The first half of the test felt like any other online aptitude test, until it didn't. The questions grew more complicated, almost clinical. Then I clicked next, and a black and white abstract image appeared. It looked like an elk, or at least something elk-like. I was told to choose a multiple-choice answer based on my first impression. "Is this seriously an ink blot test?" I muttered. "Morris, I can't help you, Kel. Just do your best," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine, Kel. Listen, you're going to make a ton of money here, all right. See the 4 ladies in the corner tonight." I glanced over and nodded. "I'm leaving with no less than $450 tonight. Tomorrow, at least double. You'll do just as well, but it gets rough sometimes. Just be prepared," he said, though I couldn't tell if he meant me or himself. I began wondering if he'd fought with his wife, or if one of the women at the tables had irritated him. But the thought of making that much money sent a shiver through me. With income like that, I could finally afford a 2-bedroom. I simply nodded and submitted my test. A few moments later, Morris excused himself to the back and returned with a small stack of papers. One by one, he slapped them onto the bar from left to right. "Non-disclosure, rules, contract." "Contract?" I asked. "That's why I set the rules down first," he muttered, far less cheerful than I remembered him being. The matte black sheet containing the rules almost blended into the bar's surface, creating a stark contrast with the other documents. "Fancy." Morris flipped it over, revealing beautifully printed white text. Rule 1: those in maroon jackets are to be ignored completely, no matter what they say or how they behave. Rule 2: if someone calls your name, look before responding. It might be inside your head, and answering a false call counts the same as speaking to a maroon coat. Rule 3: our guests expect high-level service. You must not deny any request from a guest. Rule 4: bartenders must not enter the storage room or the cooler under any circumstances. I remember thinking this had to be some bizarre dinner theater or an elaborate prank, but the serious look on Morris's face froze that thought instantly. Then I pictured my daughter's face. "What's the most you've made in a single weekend?" he asked. 2,800. My underdeveloped frontal lobe apparently took the wheel because I picked up the pen. The following day was Friday, and I was expected back at 5 p.m. I slipped through the door 15 minutes early, my black top damp from the autumn drizzle. Shivering, I tucked my bag into a cubby behind the bar. Morris was chatting with a stylish woman in her 50s with elegant gray hair. The bar was noticeably busier than the previous night, and slow jazz warmed the room. The woman glanced over, her emerald green eyes curious. She stepped aside and slid onto a bar stool across from me. "Good evening," she said warmly. "I'm Penny." She was stunning, with eyes so deeply green they seemed almost unreal. I introduced myself, though I suspected she'd already asked about me. "She's brand new. You can order from me," Morris interrupted. "Can I not say hello?" she said with a smirk. "Besides, I need something you don't have." Morris snorted sarcastically and kept cutting limes. "Kelly, I just need a charger, hun. Do you have one for this?" She held up an iPhone, pristine, and nearly the same emerald shade as her eyes. I apologized, explaining I didn't own an Apple phone. I asked if she'd tried anyone else. The room went oddly quiet. I felt my smile flatten as Penny's expression cooled. "Kel, you have to go get her a charger," Morris said without looking up. "Oh, okay. There's a gas station across the street." Unbelievable. So I crossed a busy street in the rain to get Miss Penny her precious charger. No big deal. When I brought it back, she thanked me sweetly and slipped me a $50 bill. The thing cost $7.99. Keep it. A few minutes later, Morris introduced me to the barback, Nemo. He was a very short, older man with a noticeable limp. Morris said he'd been working there for 15 years. Since bartenders weren't allowed in the storage room or the cooler, we had to ask Nemo for everything when we ran out. I felt awful bothering him so often, but I didn't make the rules. Over time, I learned he was incredibly kind, even showing me pictures of his grandchildren. The night grew hectic, and the three of us were running nonstop. Around 9 p.m., a man slid into a corner seat at the bar. He was wearing a hooded maroon raincoat. He folded his hands neatly on the bar top, keeping the hood on. The anticipation of whatever was beneath it made my heart race. A wave of nausea crept in. Morris walked past me carrying a tray of appetizers. "Ignore him," he said quietly. I kept serving customers, plastering on polite smiles. The tip jar was filling fast. I could already count several $20 bills from where I stood. Focus. Everything was going smoothly until a slightly tipsy Penny swayed up to an open spot at the bar. "Honey, the charger you gave me isn't working. The cheap thing. Let me borrow your phone for a moment to check in at home." I really didn't want to. I liked keeping my phone on me in case my daughter needed me. But Penny raised her eyebrows impatiently, so I handed over my unlocked phone. "Thanks, just a minute or two." I watched her take it back to her table, where she sat with 3 other middle-aged women. I didn't buy for a second that none of her friends had a phone she could borrow, but I let it slide and kept working. Moments later, I heard a chorus of different laughs coming from Penny's table, everything from suppressed giggles to full-on roaring laughter. Leaning over the bar and peeking closer, I saw the women were huddled together, bent over my phone, laughing. A hot wave of humiliation and anger surged from the base of my spine up to the crown of my head. I shook Morris's shoulder. "Morris, they're going through my phone. They're laughing at something on my phone." He only shrugged and kept working. I was furious, helpless. My eyes burned as tears threatened to spill. "Hey, forget about it. You're doing great." "Tear it up, girl," someone hollered from the bar. I looked around, terrified, and saw the maroon man. His hood was down, and he was smiling directly at me. My heart plummeted at the sight of the bruised shadows beneath his eyes and the almost completely rotted teeth. He grinned too widely, nodding at me. "Tear it up, girl." His face was marked with raised scars, each in a different stage of healing. I couldn't tell if he was supporting me or mocking me. I turned to Morris, who now wore a deeply concerned expression. He slowly gave me a thumbs up. "Ignore it," he reminded me. "Tear it up," I repeated uncertainly. "Maybe like break a leg, knock him dead. I don't know, just ignore him." I nodded and forced myself to keep working. trying to swallow the humiliation from the table of bullies dissecting my entire life. Around 10 p.m., Harrison leaned out from the kitchen. "Kelly, your mom's on the phone. It's about your daughter. Something about a peanut." I slammed the unopened beer in my hand onto the cooler and spun around, ready to sprint to the kitchen, when Morris grabbed my shoulder hard. "What?" I snapped. "Where are you going?" "My daughter, she has a peanut allergy. I have to check." "I didn't hear anything, Kelly. You always have to check if someone else heard it. Maybe you weren't listening." "I am always listening," I said, trembling. "Let me go." "Take a seat a moment. Take a break." My trust in Morris was unraveling fast. More tears welled up. I glanced toward the maroon man again. He lifted a filthy napkin toward me. On it, the words "tear it up" were scrawled in jagged, childish handwriting. He was giggling, nodding. He was really starting to get under my skin. Looking closer, I realized the letters weren't ink. They were a perfect, deep crimson. My stomach churned. I squinted, trying to see better. In his right hand, he held a small box cutter. His left forearm dripped blood. "Morris," he looked over instinctively. "There's nothing we can do unless a guest asks for him to be removed," he said quietly. The tears that had been threatening finally spilled down my cheeks. My entire nervous system was buzzing with fear. An older man with a white beard noticed the maroon man's bleeding and looked mildly disgusted. He curled his finger at Morris, summoning him. Morris disappeared into the back. A moment later, a man in a white coat appeared and escorted the maroon man toward the kitchen, presumably out the back door. Relief rushed through me. I finally breathed. I felt sorry for him, and I just wanted to go home. I was mixing a drink for a woman at Penny's table when a piercing, visceral scream ripped through the bar from the kitchen. It sounded like something being gutted alive. "Morris, did you hear that?" I gasped. He turned away from me, grinding a lime into the bottom of a mojito glass. "No, I don't hear anything." Liar, I carried the pretentious drink to Penny's equally pretentious, tipsy friend. Penny finally returned my phone. She looked me over like a predator eyeing wounded prey. "I'm glad your blonde little face stayed in the past," she said. Then she slid a $100 bill across the table. "Thanks for the entertainment." I kept making drinks, watching the tip jar swell to an absurd amount, while enduring comments and requests that were, at best, degrading. One man demanded to see my tattoos, even the ones that required me to unbutton my top. Another refused to let me button it back up until I sang the national anthem, while his eyes crawled over my skin. Midnight arrived with no sign of a break, work or otherwise. I needed the money badly, and as long as I left in one piece, I intended to push through. Nemo came to stand beside me, gently resting his hand on mine. "You're going to be okay, honey. You stay, finish your contract, and never come back. Either way, you're going to be okay. I'm not coming back tomorrow, Nemo. Whatever I make tonight will hold me over until I find something else." Nemo's eyes dimmed with sadness. He lifted his hand off mine. "You don't have a choice, Kelly, didn't you know?" "Of course I have a choice, Nemo. They can sue me if they want, but they can't drag me back into this place." He paused, staring at me like he was grieving at my funeral. "You'd be lucky if all they did was drag you back. Think of your daughter." I stepped back from Nemo, shaking my head in disbelief. "He's insane too, my only friend here." When 1 a.m. came, I still had 2 hours left in this hellhole before I could walk out, file a police report, and never return. A young man, the youngest I'd seen at the bar, sat directly across from me slicing fruit. "Is this Kelly?" he asked Morris, as if I couldn't speak for myself. Morris nodded, clearly irritated. You could feel the history between them. The man was already drunk. "Kelly, have you met Mace's wife?" he asked, tilting his head. I shook mine, exhausted. "How about you call her? Let's play a little prank." Morris's face froze. His hand tightened around the bottle opener. "Call Toya and tell her Morris is leaving her for you, that he's too much to tell her himself," the man sneered, acting like a spoiled child. My face flushed with embarrassment. Are all rich people this sadistic? Just then, the guy obsessed with my tattoos plopped down beside the sneering trust fund brat, slinging an arm over his shoulder and distracting him long enough to break the tension. "Go take a break," I whispered to Morris, praying the drunk would forget his little game. Morris slipped into the kitchen. "So Ronnie, you've met Kelly, huh? Doesn't she have the sexiest tattoos?" the older man asked, making unwelcome eye contact with me. The younger drunk barely reacted, staring at his phone. "I really like the one with the little dove," the older one said. "My favorite too, sir," I replied, forcing a smile. It was true, the tattoo was for my daughter. "Less you and me have that one, huh?" he slurred. "You want the same tattoo? Be my guest. I won't sue you for copyright infringement," I joked, instantly regretting how bold it sounded. "No, I want that one," he said, cocking his head and grinning. He slid something green and plastic from his pocket, flicking a lever with his thumb. A box cutter blade clicked into place. My heart hammered, my vision blurred. No way they would actually take this that far. I looked around, silently begging anyone to step in. My hands went cold, my fingers numbing. At the exit stood the massive bouncer, arms crossed, blocking the door like a wall. Hypervigilance kicked in. Morris was gone, and even if he wasn't, he was bound by that damn contract. The two Milan men clutched each other, laughing at my terror. "Come on now, I'm a good tipper, sweetheart. Just the little dove," the tattoo fetishist coaxed. I scanned the room paralyzed. The rules sat on the back counter like a death sentence written in elegant font. The box cutter in the monster's hand. The doorman, the phone, Nemo. All useless. A bloody napkin lay on the tile, smeared with shoe prints, my deranged cheerleader's parting gift, maybe the only thing tonight that made any sense. Tear it up. Tear up the damn contract. "There's antibacterial soap in the back. May I wash my arm first?" He frowned, considered it, then shrugged and nodded. I walked to the kitchen with tears filling my eyes. I scrubbed my arm, preparing for a scene straight out of the Saw franchise. I checked the back door. It was chained shut. I peeked out, signaling for Nemo. He limped over. "Type a message to my daughter," I whispered. "Tell her I love her, just in case something happens before I get home. My hands are too shaky." He nodded, typing slowly with one finger. "Why are you even here, Nemo? If you know how bad this place is, why stay?" Without looking up, he told me about his sick wife, her medical bills, his family in another country, one misfortune after another. I felt genuinely sorry for him. Life could be cruel. He handed my phone back. Then his eyes widened in terror. Someone was behind me, a butcher knife pressed against his stomach. "Kelly, open the storage room, now." I pressed the blade slightly into the tough flesh of his abdomen. "I can't, they'll kill me for this," he stammered, hands raised. "My contract, rip it apart," I ordered, careful not to step over the threshold of the storage room. He scanned inside hurriedly and pulled a small metal lockbox from a shelf. With shaking hands, he dug out a key, opened the box, and lifted a stack of papers. The top page, my ID stapled onto my contract. "Morris, too," I added coldly. He blinked up at me, then let out a small, broken chuckle. Tears glistened in his eyes. Morris doesn't have a contract." "What?" "This is his place," Nemo whispered. "Morris owns the bar, he owns you." The bile surged up my throat. My whole body burned. I had trusted him. "He met my daughter, my family." "Tear it up, Nemo," I whispered. He tore the contract down the middle, his tears falling onto the torn pieces. The two halves hit the storage room floor. In his other hand, Nemo still held another stack of papers, a man's ID stapled to a contract. I took it from him, leaning in to look closely. The photo showed a young man, a far younger, less broken, less disheveled version of the maroon man. "What is this?" I breathed. "He fulfilled his contract," Nemo replied quietly. "This is what happens after. He broke his only rule by trying to get you out." I left that night and never returned. Now I work a minimum wage job. My daughter and I share a one-bedroom apartment, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Don't follow the whistling when you're a kid growing up. When I was growing up in Louisiana, I spent most of my time wandering the woods, hunting, fishing, doing the usual things. Those woods were full of old legends and strange tales, many of them passed down to me by my grandfather. Once I was old enough to start exploring on my own, he began sharing more of them. One of the stories was about something he called PDP Pon. I always assumed it was just a creepy tale he made up to spook me. It sounded ridiculous, honestly. According to him, if I ever heard whistling in the woods, I should never follow it, or PDP Pon would take me away. Classic don't wander off scare tactics, or so I thought. One morning, well before sunrise, I headed out to hunt squirrels. I sat on a fallen log waiting for the first light, listening for the soft rustle of branches or the thump of falling acorns. Those early mornings were some of my favorite moments. The cool air, the stillness, the feeling that the whole forest was holding its breath. Once the sun had climbed high enough for me to see without my flashlight, I got up and took a look around, deciding where to go. At 14, I felt confident. My dad had drilled the basics of survival into me. Always note the sun's direction, walk with it at your side, and put it on the opposite side when heading back. Simple rules, but I'd never gotten lost using them. After hiking about 5 miles and shooting a few squirrels along the way, I reached a small clearing. I decided to sit and wait. The woods had gone quiet, and when nothing is moving, you might as well be still too. That's when I heard it, a whistle from my right. Not the sharp kind someone uses to get attention, more like someone casually whistling a tune. I remember thinking, what kind of idiot whistles in the middle of the woods when people are hunting? The sound got closer, heading straight toward me. In the woods, we don't usually shout to each other. Instead, we make a kind of whooping call to signal our presence. So I gave a loud whoop, hoping whoever was approaching would get the hint, either go around me or at least stop the damn whistling. But they didn't. The whistling didn't fade or grow nearer, it just kept going. I stood up, squinted in the direction of the sound, but saw no one. Figuring it was someone wearing expensive camouflage, I finally yelled, "Hey, I'm trying to hunt over here." Nothing changed. Irritated, I started walking toward the whistling, ready to tell whoever it was to knock it off. I walked nearly 500 yards, but never saw a soul. I stopped, confused. Was I losing my mind? Then the whistling came again from behind me. That's when I wondered if my cousin was messing with me. He'd been right there the night Grandpa told us the story, and he knew exactly where I liked to hunt. I walked back toward the sound, calling, "Brett, if that's you, I swear to God." Hunting was the last thing on my mind now. I just wanted to catch whoever was screwing with me. But when I reached the clearing, it was gone, completely. Trees filled the space as if the clearing had never existed. My confusion turned into something colder. The whistling started again, this time from my right. That's when I realized I didn't recognize anything around me. Nothing looked familiar. It felt like the forest had shifted while I wasn't looking, like someone had rearranged the trees. Then I noticed the sun. It was already high overhead. My stomach dropped. I had no idea which direction to go. The whistling sounded again behind me. I walked the other way, trying to get distance from it. After a few minutes, the sound came from directly ahead, closer than ever. That was when I remembered the gun in my hands. I planted my feet and refused to move. I didn't know what else to do. A shape emerged through the trees, a figure, but wrong. It looked like a person, but I couldn't focus on it. My eyes kept slipping off it, like it was blurred out, a dark smudge shaped vaguely like a human body. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, nothing helped. When it moved toward me, I fired. A scream tore through the woods, a sound like deafening microphone feedback, so loud I thought my eardrums would burst. I ran. I didn't look back. Eventually, I found a deer trail. Things slowly began to look familiar. I spotted used shotgun shells, my own, and with that, I realized where I was. I followed the trail back to camp, where my dad and grandpa were waiting. The moment Dad saw me, he started shouting, demanding to know where I'd been and why I hadn't come back. I told him I'd only been gone a few hours. Why were they so early? But they were. I hadn't come back to camp the previous night at all. I'd been gone almost an entire day. I didn't tell them what happened. Dad never would have believed me. Instead, I lied and said I'd gotten lost and camped out. They didn't let me hunt alone for a while after that. That night, as we sat around the fire, Dad walked off to answer nature's call, and my grandfather turned to me and said quietly, "You followed the whistling, didn't you?"
Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts about this in the comments. See you tomorrow.